Dear kids of Reddit, what is the most freaked up crap you've caught your parents doing? Heard the Hoover pretty late at night and the noise seemed to be coming from my now divorced dad's room. Curious 10-year-me went to investigate. Dad was balls deep in Henry the Hoover. Henry NOOOO. I was camping in Scotland with my friend and my dad along the West Highlands. I think that's what it's called. So we shared a 3-man tent for a week. My mum was working then, so when the weekend came she decided to come up and join us. So when the night comes, the 4 of us have to squeeze into a 3-man tent. We're all touching. It's pretty cozy. I was in the middle with my friend on my left and my parents on my right. This just happened to be one of those nights where you just kinda toss and turn and not be able to switch off to sleep. My dad was next to me facing away towards my mum, and at about 2 or 3 in the morning my dad nudges me, and again, and again, and again, slowly picking up the pace for a few minutes until he lets out a sigh and then stops. For the rest of that night I lay there eyes wide open, listening to my friend snore like a tank, thinking what the crap just happened. Come the morning, the suckers have the freaking biggest, cheekiest grins on their face. TLDR. My parents fricked next to me in a tent. Don't downplay it, dude. Your parents fricked on you. When I was little my parents issued a rule that no one was allowed to eat in the family room. Not even the adults. I followed that rule even if I hated it. And one night I sneaked out of my room and glanced over the balcony into the family room. There were my parents watching TV and eating ice cream. Never in my short life had I felt so much betrayal. To me, it was the most fricked up thing I could find them doing. That's not the only thing your dad ate in the family room. After my parents' divorce, I was staying with my dad for a week. He has to go to work, so a babysitter came by. She was a cute college chick. We had fun hanging out, and I developed a little crush. I was in bed by the time my dad got home, so early the next morning I went to check on him. My dad was in bed, but he wasn't alone. The babysitter was naked in bed with him. First boobs I ever saw. My brother, Huff, had to witness his father attempting to hang himself. Pretty fricked up. It was when he was 9. Came home with my proudly rented VHS tape from Blockbuster, went into my room to pop it in my VHS player, and what do I find? Porky suckers still in the VHS player. I mean, come on, dad in my freaking room. Not my parents, but a friend I had in high school. The parents were really wealthy compared to the rest of us and had a huge house in the rich subdivision. They went on work-related trips for weeks at a time and left the girls to fend for themselves. Obviously, they would have parties. They were a freshman and junior in high school, with alcohol and various drugs. Great times. Wonderful memories. One afternoon, we were looking up songs to blast on the desktop computer in her father's office when the younger girl Jay inadvertently opened a folder labeled Mexico Family Vacation. She even said out loud, "That's weird. We didn't go to Mexico with them." First picture in the folder is of her smiling mother, but butt naked, CM dripping down her face, surrounded by 3 Mexican dudes in a bed. She just sat and stared for a while, then got up and walked away to tell her sister. The rest of the party had obviously been alerted and continued through the folder, and when they finished, looked for, and found, more. A lot more. Needless to say, that's when we all found out her parents were swingers and their work trips were not, in fact, work trips. That's hot, but they should have hidden their pee better. When I was 7, my parents separated and my dad moved out. The same day he moved out, my mom's co-worker Ted came over and had dinner with us. I got sent to bed around 9 as usual, and was woken up not too much after 10 PM to what 7-year-old me thought was someone using a handsaw to break into the house. I ran into the living room with my baseball bat and was surprised when I didn't see someone sawing through the front door. Then I heard a phrase that didn't mean much until later in life. Husband. Never fricked me that good, but even at 7, I knew that they were having fricking, though I didn't know exactly what fricking was aside from naked grown-ups, and that mom shouldn't be fricking with someone who isn't dad. This was an unfortunate recurring theme for several weeks, being woken up to my mom getting railed, loudly, by the guy she cheated on my dad with. Eventually Ted went away. He hit me for scratching his truck, My grandpa nearly killed him, literally, and some time later, dad moved back in and things went back to normal after a few months. I talked to dad about it in my 20s, and he admitted that she cheated on him. He left and had plenty of his own fun while she was with Ted. So GG dad? Grandpa's a badass. My dad once got mad at my mom and smashed her Diablo discs. He then proceeded to wreck the rest of her games and all the other discs stored in the game cupboard. He was on the point of smashing my Freddy Fish CD-ROMs as well. I was 4 years old at the time, before I gave him the puppy dog-eyed look of not the Freddy Fish and he came to his senses. This just broke my heart a little. They were banging in the next room. It lasted about 45 seconds and was mainly just heavy breathing with no moaning. Then I heard my stepdad say thank you as he rolled off and went to bed. So chivalry isn't dead. My mom giving herself a wine enema, like she literally siphoned a giant tube, stuck one end right into a Franzia bladder, and the other end into her butt. The old Franzia wine enema move. Mom is such a trickster. I grew up in the US, but my parents are both Iranian Jews and very conservative. No sleepovers as kids, used to follow me around when first got my driver's license, intensely anti-marijuana use, etc. Fast forward to me stopping over at their house to drop off some laundry and catching both parents and my equally conservative aunt hunched over a propane torch smoking hash in the garage. Yay hypocrisy. My brother and I caught dad installing this machine outside and above the picture window in the living room, which shaved bars of soap into what looked like snowflakes descending in the absence of real snow, so he could turn it on around Christmas and pretend it was snowing as you looked outdoors through the window. Besides the flakes looking artificial, it covered the yard and walkway with fine slivers of soap. When it rained, it turned the area into a slippery mess which couldn't be cleaned up. Still, dad was great to try to make things extra special and creative for our holiday celebration together. This seems like something a well-meaning father would do in a sitcom, only to have it backfire when his wife and kids slip on the soap afterwards. When I was 10 or 11 or some crap, I came downstairs out of my room at like midnight only to find my parents drunk FW some of their friends. Weird part was they had like 200 plus glow sticks and were spraying the liquid crap inside everywhere. The whole house glowed and it was pretty sweet for a 10-year-old to experience. 10 out of 10 would do again. Your folks were on acid. It's a lazy Sunday and my dad is chilling in his bedroom with his tablet and watching P. Little does he know that he left his Bluetooth speaker on in the kitchen. I was in the kitchen where the speaker was, but had my headphones in so I wasn't able to hear it until about halfway through the video. I take my headphones off to the sound of skin slapping against each other and oh yeah frick me in the butt. I busted out laughing immediately and turned the speaker off. I never did tell him haha. He found out when the sound suddenly started blasting through the tablet. My friend and his younger brother were staying in a hotel room with 2 twin beds. His dad had just gotten remarried and they slept in the bed across from him while he was with his brother. My friend wakes up around 12 AM to the sounds of his dad and stepmom doing it hard. I forgot to say they broke the bed a bit. Turns out my mom has a joint account with her useless, drug addicted, permanently unemployed butthole of a brother. I've always wondered how my grandmother could support him on her own. Turns out my mom has been stealing money from my dad to support that waste of life. Anyways, back in the early 90s, when a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old could be sent to the movie theater with $20 and afford both tickets, drinks, popcorn, and candy, that's exactly what my parents did one Saturday afternoon. There weren't any good movies playing that day, so we each grabbed a soda and started going back home. When we got home and opened the front door, there it all was. We were in the middle of the doorway, and our parents were naked in the middle of the living room. So were the neighbors from across the street. The husband was in the middle of my mom, and my stepfather was in the middle of his wife. My hand never left the doorknob. My brother and I both froze. Someone said oh crap, the kids, and we backed the frick out of there. We didn't go home until dinner time. Dinner, and the several hours long conversation afterwards were awkward. That's also when I started drinking coffee. We got the entire story of the birds and the bees. safe fricking and condoms. And sometimes moms and dads like to do adult things with other moms and dads, but that's okay as long as everyone is doing it together. So your parents were saying orgies are chill, but never stand in the corner wanking it and watching. You have to do it together. Be a team player. Saw my mom getting it in the butt on top of her boyfriend's Corvette. Dad asked to borrow my phone so he could listen to some music while mowing the lawn. When he gave it back, I realized my music library was open, but so was my kick conversation with my girlfriend, where we had exchanged some naughty pictures. Haven't talked to him about it. Don't know if I should. TLDR. Dad looked at nudes of GF and I. We went on a 3-week vacation when I was 17 and my boyfriend stayed at our house to take care of the animals. He discovered my parents' home video collection and watched every single DVD. It turns out my mom is a hot wife and my dad's a cuckold, and dear old dad gets off watching and filming mom at her sluttiest. The DVDs show my mom fricking other guys, from 1 at a time to a maximum of 5 at once. My boyfriend counted them all and they show her with over 60 different men. I watched little snippets and still can't believe what I saw. Your boyfriend totally jacked it to your mom. Zero question. Call me Ranch cause I be dressing. After sleeping over at a friend's house the previous night, I came home the next day and found my dad's shorts on the floor of my room. When I asked my parents about it, my mom burst out laughing and admitted to them fricking on my bed while I was away. Well, at least she's honest. I was around 7 years old and dad was installing a satellite dish. We hear a loud thud and then nothing for the next half an hour or so. Dad comes back in soon enough, and mom asked what the noise was. Turns out he fell from the roof but for whatever reason decided to get the job done. Afterwards he complained about his chest being sore so he went to the doctor. He had 3 cracked ribs and a sprained back. My dad's pretty great. He does crazy stuff all the time. One time he was breaking beehives with a hammer and a plastic bag. He's very allergic to bees. He's my hero. D. I like how none of the family tried to help. He could have snapped his neck and been bleeding out. What I thought was weird at first, but yeah, so I walked into the ensuite of my parents' room because my brother was on the shower in the normal bathroom. Usual stuff. They weren't around. Pair of boobs in the bath. Just boobs. I didn't take a close look. They were just rubbery looking fake boobs. I noped the frick out of there. Nothing to do with me, but I couldn't help but imagine what on earth crazy frick acts would involve fake boobs. I just didn't want to think about it. Few weeks later they told me my mom had breast cancer. Put 2 and 2 together. They were "This is what cancer feels like boobs, comma." Came home early from middle school to walk in on my unemployed, drug addicted father shooting up H. I didn't technically catch them doing anything, but there was that one time I went to grab something off the top shelf of my mom's closet and an old, decaying bottle of lube fell on me and basically exploded. 11-year-old me was traumatized and didn't speak to my mom for a week. When I was younger my parents used to smoke insane amounts of weed. They used to tell me I couldn't tell anyone because they'd get into trouble. In my childish mind I thought it was because they were putting cigarette tobacco into their own papers. Didn't click in my mind that they were adding something else to it. Haha, never did tell anyone though. Good kid. Mama didn't raise no snitch. When I was like 6 or 7 my parents had a horrible fight in the middle of the night. When I went into their room to check out what the heck all the yelling was about, my dad had my mom pinned against the wall with his hand around her neck and his fist up in the air ready to strike. He was well beyond wasted and when he saw me, he said, "Get the frick away from here or I swear I'm gonna kill her." As you can guess, pretty traumatic thing to see for a 6-year-old. When I was 4 my dad called me a fricking butthole inches from my nose, but you win. That's really fricked up. I walked in on my stepdad masturbating while me and my sister had friends over. There was a lot of screaming. But seriously, who plays pee at full volume on the TV while there are several kids in your house? Diddlers. Diddlers do that. 2 days after my mother passed away, I walked in on him sleeping with another woman. When I was about 6 I saw my mom once with someone holding a knife to her throat. Another time, it was a gun to her head. It still fricks with my head. Not me, but my friend caught her parents taking the light bulbs out and using the bulb to smoke M. Oh man, I guess the time my stepfather dumped my mother's coke down the toilet and she was twisting his testicles in revenge. She must love her Coca-Cola. Not my parents, but my friend and I were 13 or something and we were filming ourselves on his family's webcam. We open up the folder to go through our movies and I pointed out a couple of videos with some weird names. We click on one called Dirty Headers and immediately were met with the penetrating gaze of his dad staring directly into the camera. We watched it for a while kind of confused, until the camera tilts and you see the back of his mom's head bobbing up and down. My friend gasped, cried, and then started dry heaving. Then his sister came in super high, laughed at us and took off picture of my friend's full-fledged breakdown. Props to OP for getting his fat material without the NSW tag. My dad was throwing hunting knives across the living room to land hilt deep in the couch. I was around 13 at the time and decided I'd better just go back up to my room and leave him the frick alone. My dad has issues. Issues of being awesome. At the end of 8th grade we had a goofy ceremony, like a mini graduation. My dad and stepmom were drinking pretty heavily at the time and I noticed they were both pretty buzzed by the time they showed up. I was going to a friend's house afterwards so I basically just checked in with them and took off to his place. He lived right around the corner from my house, and his mom was also pretty involved in the bar scene in our tiny town of 2,000 people. So fast forward to later that night, we're just chilling in his room being normal 14-year-olds, playing video games, etc. His mom had someone over and they were in the other room, but we didn't really pay attention as we were enjoying our game. We hit a lull and I started to recognize the male voice in the other room, my dad. I thought it was odd, but I knew they knew each other so I figured both my parents were there and they were just having a get together of their own. Then I saw that it was 3 AM and I had yet to hear my stepmom's voice. I asked my friend to grab me a drink from the fridge and see what they were all up to. I heard my dad talking to my friend and I could tell he was hammered. My friend came back to his room after a few minutes and told me it was just his mom and my dad. His mom was divorced and they already had a pretty crappy relationship at that point so he was pretty used to this kind of thing. But he knew I was pretty upset about it. We tried to ignore it for a while until we heard them both go into his mom's room and shut the door. Things were quiet for a while, but we both looked at each other and knew it was time to take off to my place. I don't think to this day he remembered that I was there or that I knew about it. That was the day I lost all respect for him. We haven't spoken in a few years now, even though he's gotten sober. My stepmom and him finally got divorced, and I actually have a really good relationship with her. She's been sober for 5 years now. I was the only child to live in that house up until I graduated. Everyone else got fed up with this kind of crap. I think I had it pretty easy though, because by the time I was 16 they had basically given up on parenting and I was left to my own devices. My sisters had to deal with them at their worst. I was just ignored. Till my parents were a lot less fricked up than my peers. Got a Facebook message from my uncle's ex-wife's daughter revealing that she has been having an affair with my dad for 2.5 years. Suru, that's fun. Found my parents' fellatio DVD. Worst part is that I found it when I was with my friend. Slowly break down their child's confidence through multiple series of emotionally detrimental verbal attacks. Sobs. My mother's new boyfriend nailing her hard from behind. I walked from upstairs just to behold this, then keeping few seconds of eye contact with my mom while his boyfriend's still going hard. Then just walking out of the house and sitting on a rock forest near home with my head on my hands at least 30 minutes. When I got back inside they looked like they are just finished and putting their clothes on. When I asked my mom why the frick now, well I'm home and she just answered get used to it, life is this. When you cut her out of your life, if she ever asks you why, she taught you exactly what to say. Sorry that you had to deal with this. I accompanied my mom to a visit with her psychologist. She went into the bathroom before her appointment and apparently swallowed a large amount of benzodiazepines she had been prescribed. While in her visit the pills started to take effect, and she told the shrink what she did. With her starting to lose consciousness and coherency, we both walked her across the street to the ER. By that time we were practically carrying her. The staff rushed her back, and the next time I saw her was a brief glimpse of her in a hospital gown, charcoal around her mouth and spilled down the front. She was flailing around, but was more or less unconscious. I thought she was going to die. I had to tell my dad what happened. This was a few years ago and my mom is fine now. We don't talk about what happened. I was about 7 at the time and I had just received a pair of awesome Spider-Man pajamas from my older sister, you know, the ones that came with the mask and everything, and I thought to myself, I'm going to surprise my parents. So that night I got all dressed up in my Spider-Man costume and donned the mask and then went crashing into my parents' bedroom, rolling along the floor pretending I was Spider-Man, only to find my mum tied to the bed and gagged with my dad standing over her. My parents were into some weird crap, man. Perfect family photo moment. Hearing my dad say he'd vote for Trump. You have been visited by the wisdom pupper type. Study well, pupper, or you will fail your next text at school. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.